Yes, a warm welcome to all of you for being here with us on this uh, uh, panel discussion on cloud. And we are very glad to have all of you joining us from Africa to discuss your experiences. Now, I request all the speakers to please turn on your camera and keep yourself on mute. Once I come to you, you can start speaking. But do turn on your camera so that we know that you're around. So let me start with some questions. Derek, let me ask you. Now, how do you think young companies and startups can adapt to the cloud, given how dynamic their needs are? They could be small now, but who knows what's there in the future for the young and growing company. So, how do young enterprises adopt the cloud and stay safe?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi, Anisha and everyone. Thank you for that particular question. And obviously, I'll make my thoughts, very brief in the interest of time, and I'll, kind of push them a lot towards startups and the emerging small businesses, because this is an area that I have a vast experience in, and working with these type of organizations, and how they make these particular decisions obviously influences a lot of how they approach the whole issue of cloud and cloud security and data. So, of course, adapting to different, cloud solutions for companies like our own always has an angle of cost, which is obviously, a big check for early stage startups. But interestingly, when these type of organizations, or when we are in a place where we have raised enough funding, or we have starting to have enough traction, then this is at that particular point, then these decisions around the C-suite of the technology teams start to focus a lot on how can we, first of all, safeguard our information, or how can we make it more functional for the different environments in which we are deploying our different solutions. Also, from my experience, when that particular time happens, and especially with the growing ecosystem, for example, in Nairobi, we tend to, not opt for, dynamic or hybrid models, but, to pick up big cloud providers like the Amazons or the Microsofts. And then we kind of just look at a way in which
Derek, I think you've muted yourself. Can you unmute yourself? We've lost you there.
I do not know what part you lost me, but as I was explaining, most of the time we, when balancing these particular costs and with functionality, then we opt for, already established cloud providers like Amazon's, Microsoft, as well, Google, which in a sense kind of creates that essence of security. But I can, the ecosystem is growing here. Of course, the startup community, technology space is an interesting area to look at, because these are going to be the type of organizations that are going to fuel the next wave of the cloud and cloud security opportunities. Just maybe as my final thoughts would be on how then do these young companies approach the issue of data protection as as a legal requirement by the by the government. We have a Data Protection Act that was enacted in 2019, that was even scrutinized by a lot of players, including emerging web services. And as much as it's not as mature as what we've seen elsewhere, it is conforming to the the local demands and the local needs. And the good thing is that here in Kenya, our Minister for Information and Technology is someone who has experience, previously working with Google, so he understands this type of environments. And this act and some of the things that have been happening in the space have more, toward have created, agencies in specific sectors. So it doesn't cut across all sectors. But for example, if we look at health as well as finance or the lending, startups and institutions or SMEs, then they treat the issue of cloud security quite seriously. And if, with my experience working with a lending partner previously, is that we were approaching this with looking at how can we make it more dynamic in the sense that it is easy to scale, it is affordable. At the same time, we're able to scale most of our environment, tech environment easily. Yeah. So
all right. So Derek, for startup companies, the challenges are many, but the regulatory changes are something which are real and something that everybody has to get used to it. We've heard speakers speak earlier in the day about the laws that are coming to data protection, and everybody has to adopt to it. They are welcome. Oriyomi, how do companies then secure their cloud assets while conforming to the new legislations? Where does that leave security of digital assets? Oriyomi, can you hear me? The question is for you. Could you turn on your camera?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay, so I lost you a little bit. Can you just repeat the question a little bit?
Yeah, question is that Derek also spoke about the new legislations that the governments are coming out with for data protection. Now, how do you, as an enterprise, secure your cloud assets and digital assets which are on a cloud, your applications, etc., while conforming to the new laws? And where does that leave security?
Okay, so I would say for us in Nigeria, we also have a Data Protection Act, and we do have quite a number of regulations around data protection and financial agreements with regulations for financial sectors. And how we have been playing so far and ensuring that we stay within regulatory requirements. The regulation is a little bit lenient in terms of allowing cloud providers and allowing some set of data, can resident in the cloud. So although we do have in the financial sector, we do have quite a number of strict policies around the specific kind of data that have to, remain resident in the country. So being compliant in terms of technologically and as an organization has quite a number of different layers or different angles to look at it. You look at it from the angle of from technically where you are building up any of your solutions, you need to consider security, which is from ground up. You consider security from ground up as against what we've had in other sectors and other countries. There's some sectors that are not really regulated. So, when you're doing stuff or when you're building solutions, you don't really have to consider a lot of regulatory requirements. But Nigeria is really regulated in terms of most of the sectors. So we need to be forced to do that. And one of the major things that is being pushed right now is, I understand that the government is trying to push cloud providers to come to Nigeria and invest in Nigeria so that they could have data resilience within the country, as against having them in other countries where they have data centers. So securing your cloud assets, one of the major things I would just say is, secure it like it's on premise. Secure it like it's on premise, especially when it's exposed, and it is not more like you set up an extended office or a branch office. If you're not using it as a private cloud and like a DR strategy, you need to do every other level of defense mechanism that you do on premise. Which has to do with your firewall, your privileged identity solution, and the like. So every other solution bit needs to be inculcated in your architecture. So one of the major misnomer that we've seen over time is people would assume that because you're in the cloud, you're secure. Assuming leaving the responsibility of that security to the cloud provider. But that is not the reality, because a lot of times cloud provider just provides you an infrastructure depending on what you subscribe to, and they are allowed, you are allowed to secure yourself or decide not to secure yourself. So you have to be the one to choose. So I would say when people are building this, you need to just have this at the back of your mind. Security is key. Every security layer or controls that you apply on premise you need to apply them also in the cloud.
All right. Faheem, I want to come to you because on this panel we have a couple of you from the financial services industry. Now, what kind of regulations are there in Africa when it comes to data privacy, especially for the banking and financial services industry? Could you take us through the status of the data privacy legislations that exist in Africa? And are they the same for all sectors? Because in India, some of the laws for the financial industry are stricter, especially when it comes to KYC, localization of data being stored in the country, and so on. For companies, does this pose additional challenges of cost or greater documentation? What's your feeling?
Thank you, first of all, and hi everyone. Pleasure to connecting this forum. It's a wonderful forum actually for discussing, the cloud security, and definitely it will be a great, insights for the different practitioners which are there. Thank you again for the question, Anisha. Yes, it is difficult, like many of the 55 states of an African Union, they have really spent considerable efforts, in updating and amending the laws, regulations, and encouraging and establishing, the large digital trade economy within, the countries or within the African nations. And that's actually creating a new laws, creating a protection, creating a privacy, creating a personal data, areas where they need to follow. Starting from the 2016, when the General Data Protection Regulation (GDPR) was started from the European Union, actually its access started from even in Asia and in Africa. The country, as you said, India, in Pakistan and Bangladesh, and again in the Asian countries and all that. Yes, the Kenyan and African countries have also, started the act, like as my colleague was saying that the act is already there. But what if after the act, you have done the act, as my colleague said, the act is there. You have updated the policies, you have updated, the privacy by design. But is it already known to your people, like known to your customers, known to your internal customers, known to your external customers? And again, how you are designing privacy, with the start, how your systems are behaving and that particular one, and how your systems are also operating. That is actually something which is different and again is debatable on that particular area. Once the COVID actually started, people started working from home, most of the institutions have accelerated with the digital. No one was focusing on data or privacy or something like that. Everyone was focusing on business. Cloud security was one of the major challenge. Cloud areas people were going more in the cloud, and again this was the area where the experts like us and again like my colleague have to come again and guide the companies that how we should do. Data privacy and security are the most important factors in the success of banking industry, as you have also asked on that particular area. So complying with the data privacy and information security standards and the law will ensure the customer's confidence. It will also ensure your processing of the data in the right way in the adoption of banking. Otherwise, the regardless of whatever the benefits you have, the consumer will not be convinced that they have shared their personal data, it will be within that one. And that data privacy will be not only updating the policy, not only updating, or ticking the box. You really have to practice in the way that it is, meant for that one. Thank you.
Right. Steve, Faheem says that if data privacy is a focus area for you, the customer is going to trust you. Then why do we need legislation? You want your customer to stay with you. You don't want to lose your customer, so you're going to take care of the data and not let it leak. Why do we need legislation where you have fines to pay if you're not doing the right thing, if you're not securing data? What's your view on the legislation, and do you think companies are doing enough? Because we are seeing data breaches. Well-run companies who have invested in cybersecurity, they're still seeing data breaches. And yes, more of these are being reported ever since a large number of enterprises moved more of their applications to the cloud because of the pandemic.
Thank you very much for that question. As you rightly mentioned, data protection legislations are aimed at instilling customers' confidence, and that is very key. I've had a particular experience when I was head of IT for a state government agency. One of the concerns then was that there was this legislation from NIDA that all government data must be localized within the country. And then that became a major concern area in terms of hosting. So we weren't only dealing with issues of should we virtualize or should we collocate in terms of choice of cloud provider. We were also dealing with issues of which providers will ensure that our data are localized within the country. So truly, it's a major concern, okay? But in my current capacity, is not so emphatic where data resides. So I would like to summarize that the legislations are key to instilling customers' confidence so that they are sure that their data are not shared without their authorization and that they are not also unduly exposed to sniffers, packet sniffers, and then hackers as it may be. But I would also like to touch base on the initial point that we discussed at the beginning of this session, dynamic cloud security. By dynamism, I feel that dynamism in this context refers to the ability of your solution to adapt to various security areas in your architecture. So what do I mean? You want a solution that will handle your database security, at the same time handle network security and application security in one single space. So what we do in this regard is that we make sure that our security strategy recognizes the imperative or unified security management that keeps your security management in one location for all security areas. And it has quite a number of advantages. You're able to monitor every deployment. You're able to streamline operations. You're able to use unified workflows as applicable. You're also able to enforce consistent policy and policies across board, standardized configurations, and coordinated threat response. Thank you very much.
All right. So Steve, you brought up important points on dynamic cloud security. Stanley, I want to come to you and understand a bit more about data sovereignty. Steve spoke about co-location, something that he faced in his previous terms. There are different laws everywhere. Plus, there are multinationals that have operations and services across the world. And how do you localize everywhere? So, could you talk about data sovereignty and its impact on security in the cloud? Stanley, I request you to please turn on your camera. Yes, Stanley.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. If you could turn on your camera.
Thank you so much. So data sovereignty is very important, especially now in Kenya. The Insurance Regulation Authority has mandated that we must have data locally, especially for banks and insurance companies. It cannot go beyond borders, especially for personally identifiable information. So we are taking that very, very seriously in terms of data sovereignty. In Tanzania, especially, there has to be local data centers. And for us, who are multinational, we had to set up data centers in Tanzania because the regulator there said there must be data centers set up locally. Kenya may head the same way. Uganda may head the same way. So it's very important to understand the local regulations and the impact they have on the cloud strategy. Ideally, I would have wanted to have my data center in Amazon Web Services and my disaster recovery at Microsoft Azure data center. I would have wanted to completely outsource my data center because the advantages of outsourcing data centers to the cloud, especially for administration, skills, personnel costs, and also because of elasticity and on-demand capability that you get on the cloud. But I'm constrained by those data sovereignty regulations. Kenya enacted the Data Privacy Act of 2019, and also that one is pushing us back to start thinking about the rights of our customers in terms of data privacy. So there are so many, it's a multi-pronged approach we are taking in terms of data privacy, data sovereignty, and also regulations. So we have to take a very, very great strategy in terms of how do we become flexible, how do we become innovative, driven by of social mobility analytics and cloud. At the same time, we are being pushed back by these local regulations. So we have to strike a balance now between that flexibility and innovation and the regulations that are local pushing us back. Thank you.
Stanley, what's your solution then? The regulators want localization. You're saying that reduces your flexibility, your maneuverability, but could a private cloud perhaps be an answer? Maybe a little more expensive, but could it be more? Could it be an answer to get that flexibility, to have the innovation, and still serve your customers?
Yes, yes. Customers don't care where our data is hosted. They just want fast responses. They're used to the likes of Netflix and Amazon, where they get great customer experiences. So they don't really care where we're hosting locally, our data centers, or in Amazon, or in Google Cloud Platform, or in Red Hat, or in Microsoft. So we must respond to the customer demands.
Of course, the customer is king, no doubt about that. But Oriyomi, do legislations pull you back? Stanley says that the customer doesn't care where his data is stored. He doesn't care till the time his data is breached, till his data is revealed, till he is compromised. And many people feel that a public cloud is more prone to a security breach. So you have legislations that want localization and more. Now, how do you secure your assets, Oriyomi? You could have your assets spread across different, types of clouds. You could have a multi-cloud strategy. You could have something which is on-prem as well. So Steve spoke about, your security architecture. That is something that you can follow and track very carefully. What do you follow, Oriyomi? How do you secure your assets, which may be across different clouds?
Okay, so for multi-cloud environment, or should I say hybrid situation, the biggest challenge that you would have is visibility and total control. I could understand, different countries have sovereignty around you setting up a data center within the country, and this is totally because of control, that they, want a physical level of control. They want to be able to control what is happening physically, as against, looking at just the virtual instance of people using cloud service to gain extra edge. So Stanley did mention the major reasons why people would go to the cloud is, because of skill sets and because of the operational overhead that it gives you, especially if your business is not technology. So if your business is manufacturing, for instance, you may be considering, why not let me focus on what my core strengths are. But, you have that biggest challenge, which is the visibility. One of the major things I try to do is try to keep the windows smaller. So in as much as you're using an hybrid setup or you're using a cloud, you need to ensure that you have a known door, and then you have almost zero windows. That analogy is, so I'll give an example is, so you do have a cloud, and then, you have on-premise. One of the major things you should do automatically is to ensure that, your cloud can only be accessed via, a specific means, or, you could practically count on top of your hands how those services will be consumed. So what you're relying on in the cloud is you're relying on availability. that automatically reduces the door or the windows or access by hackers. Yes, you may be vulnerable to insider threats, which is within those complaints that you're hosting your virtual workloads or you're running your workload from. Let's imagine that you're using AWS from S3 instances. You might have issues with probably having trust issues around those countries, those different countries' regulations saying, "Oh, I need data about this company." I'm pushing or forcing the hands of those cloud providers to be able to provide those data. So the way I look at this is you need to have proper visibility. Because when you have proper visibility, proper investment in visibility, then you understand what your controls are. Then you understand what you need to put controls on. You understand what the policies are. And then you centralize security. A lot of times you see people have like two different sets of tools. You have two different sets of NAC because of your cloud workload and then your on-premise workload. You have two different set of privileged identity management because of your on-premise and then your cloud. Most of these cloud services even provide that natively to say, oh, you can subscribe for identity management system. So one of the major things I just say is try and keep it as central as possible. Try and ensure that the control is general. The more you have controls, the more you have systems to figure with, because on the same control, the more you have issues. Immediately you do that, just know that you're vulnerable because you are open out there. And encryption is very key. I keep telling people when you put it even in your on-premise, you need to ensure that it's encrypted. Data at rest, and then when it's in the cloud, you need to ensure it's also encrypted. And then one of the layers of extra layer, I may be a little bit on the head in terms of security, but one of the major things I do is I encrypt data that is even in the cloud. So data in cloud, and I don't use for instance, encryption manager in the cloud, because I know that if I use it's just like locking my door and putting the key with my where people can see it. So what I do is I bring that key on premise locally to us, so that the control is is spread, and then even if you have access to the data from the cloud, you can't really use it. And so I would say people should ensure they do that. Ensure you have your backup secured and you have a proper plan about having those backups. Ensure that you educate your employees and you understand who is accessing what, so that when you see a different pattern, you can easily identify that. And take passwords seriously because passwords are very, very key. A lot of people will say when you do MFA and you're fine. Yeah, when you do MFA, you're fine, but are you really secure proof? The answer is no. So you need to keep it, you need to keep it in a lock key, and then you continue doing testing. So one of the major things that have worked for me over the years is I do quarterly testing. A little, as I said, I'm a little bit on the edge in terms of security, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to be called over to say, oh, something happened that I'm not aware of. So,
you got to be proactive and you got to test. Yes. Faheem, when you're deciding what to move to the cloud, what part of your operations, what application, is security an important aspect to also consider when deciding what's going to move on cloud, apart from the legislation and the law? Faheem, the question is for you.
Can you please repeat your question again? Sorry.
My question is that when you're moving applications or operations onto the web, onto the cloud, the risk of attack, the security aspects, will they also drive your decision on what you move to the cloud and how you will plan your security architecture? Where does legislation and the law come in?
Yes, thank you. The majority of the data breach is actually caused by, first of all, human errors. As one of my colleagues was actually saying, the passwords and all that, that is actually also a human error, And most of the data breach, if you actually carefully actually do the investigation, you will identify that it was actually the security breach inside, which was done, by the internal people. And that actually causes unforeseen incidents, due to the random theft and the briefcase, or phone calls or brutal cyber attacks or ransomware or anything on that one. The data breach is very clear right now that how you need to, you need to give the information to the authority, like within 72 hours. If you have identified that issue, then you definitely need to report to the data protection authority and data commissioner, and all that. If the breach is likely to result a high risk and also adversely affecting your individual rights and again freedoms of your institution's data, you must also inform the affected individuals, like in this case, your customers. In this case, the person you have obtained the data without undue delays. That is also what it has been mentioned. But most of the institutions actually, they don't do. They actually, they keep silent. But the data protection and the privacy legislation and regulation is very clear. Once you inform the data privacy and again the cyber attacks, security firms also, or the governments also, they come and they again, there's already a long queue over there. So it also takes too much time for your investigation to be done, to be, resulted out and all that. So definitely it takes time. But from the point of view, you have to mention to the person which is the data affected and also your institution. The main point also is that how you, as in protocol of that one, how you ensure that, that should not repeat again if it is done, or if it is being done over there. So cloud security again comes, the first, as one of my colleagues was also saying, that asset management, asset client, cloud security management is also one of the key area where, you have to be very keen on this one. This privacy data is actually, as we are the security experts, we all know that, these privacies is not like because of the legislation or regulation. It is actually, we have to be, to fulfill or we have to do the compliance on that particular area. As also Stanley was saying that sometimes the customers don't understand. Even if you will report to your customer that your data is breached today, and we are reporting, to the government, or your data is breached. So they will be confused. They will say, what is that? And might be their confidence will shake, from that institution, be it in the financial institution, retail, SME, entrepreneur, or whatever. But definitely their confidence will go out from that particular institution. So most of the institution actually, they don't report. And if they report, they only report to the government and wait for, the final answer from that one. Thank you.
Right. Steve, we heard Oriyomi speak about visibility as well. So how do you secure your assets, keeping so much in mind? You want your visibility, you want your flexibility, you want your security. What tips do you have to all those who are listening in?
Okay, thank you very much. One of the things with security considerations is to control access within the multi-cloud environment by maintaining least privilege. What I mean is you don't want to give super user access to someone who should have just been a backup operator. Okay, so you need to maintain a competency and knowledge base for using multi-cloud. One major assumption people make is that anybody who has used the AWS, for example, will do very well with Azure, but unfortunately, that's not absolutely true. You need to have those skill sets, to manage across different cloud platforms. So one of the ways to mitigate that kind of risk is to maintain a competency and knowledge base for the multi-cloud. Another area I will touch on is critical applications should be designed to have appropriate redundancy. So you have critical applications running on your cloud. You don't want to establish a single point of failure. So you must create adequate redundancy such that you have high availability for those critical applications. The other point I want to talk about is data management solutions. You could still leverage data management solutions to make sure that your data on the cloud are unalterable but accessible. And then in a situation where you are using scripts for provisioning your virtual machines, you need to also make sure that you test those scripts in a controlled environment before you run them, because it might just end up being counterproductive. What if those scripts are inaccurate? You just end up increasing the downtime you have within your enterprise. Then lastly, I heard Oriyomi touch on backup. Backup is very critical in running a cloud or a multi-cloud environment. A lot of people make assumptions that because you are on the cloud, you don't need to run backups. So I would like to throw this open. What if data residing within the cloud is modified by a hacker, and that is the same data you are relying upon restoration? What happens? So backup is, the importance of backup cannot really be overemphasized here. Thank you very much.
All right. Testing backup operations very, very important. Derrick, yours is a company in Agritech. How do you think compliance with regulation increases the cost burden for you? Do you think it's very, this data regulation is important, but should there be different tiers of data regulation, strictness of law for different type of companies? And how do you, manage the cost of going onto a cloud, for securing your cloud, for having somebody in your own office, managing the cloud and the security? What are the things that startups have to consider?
Yes, thanks again. So I think for one of the things, first of all, we do in our own environment is that, we try to create what we call a sandbox of approaches to be able to support different functionalities in the organization in a very cost-effective level. And apart from just, trying as much as possible to, use cloud that is, security adapting, is that we also have organizations that we work with who do audits from time to time. So these are local, startups again, which are very cloud security, or how well our environments are, and of course, in that same light, then they are able to recommend to us what within our means is it that we can be able to continue securing the important assets of our operation. And in regards to regulation, is that as regulations keeps up with the of course again the dynamic startup ecosystem, is that we are also having a lot of players right now who are now setting up shop locally to be able to provide these solutions within our geographical locations. And what this does is that it makes it a little bit more easy to access them. So for example, previously before we migrated our solutions, after doing a raise to more sophisticated cloud providers like Amazon, we used local providers, and some of the things that were happening is that we were, in a nutshell, also outsourcing the security, which means we are depending on third party to be able to keep our information, our data safe. But right now we have more advanced, more developed local solutions providers who have now set up shop in Nairobi, and these, of course, again help the startups through a bundle of solutions, a journey. First of all, they do audits. They recommend. Then we sit down with them. We design solutions that are also very, very cost responsive, and then we work on those solutions as of course the organizations also mature up. So it's really growing, still growing, but I see a lot is going to change. Government is also playing catch up. But hopefully now things will become more exciting, especially for people looking also to develop solutions or provide solutions in that space.
All right, Stanley, we heard one of the participants say that a lot of the reason why breaches are happening is because of an employee error or human error. So how important is it to train your manpower, keep difficult passwords, and what about the latency part?
Hi, I can't hear that question.
So I was asking about the training, manpower training. Your own employees have to be trained so that all your assets are digitally safe and secure. So how much are companies investing in that? Is it really important? And what about data latency? Stanley, we can't hear you. Are you saying something?
Yes, I could not hear you. You had, I don't know, the network was very bad. What was the question?
The question is about training your manpower for keeping your digital assets safe. And what about the latency issue?
Yes, like I said earlier, skills is very important, especially now with the move to cloud. We have started enrolling our people on AWS courses because we know that the next set of competencies are based on cloud skills and cybersecurity skills. So we have started enrolling our people on AWS and then Microsoft Azure. So and the people who are being trained are very, very, very excited because they know that the future skills will give them career opportunity. You know, it's all about aligning the skill, upskilling, and career prospects. So we are very excited about this, and we're investing a lot in that. Thank you.
All right. So upskilling is important. Faheem, when it comes to securing your assets in the cloud, how much of it is the responsibility of the vendor providing the cloud services, and how much is it your responsibility? How does the company and the vendor work together to ensure that assets are completely secure?
Thank you. I would like to first answer your previous question. It's a wonderful question, by the way. You see, first, the building the capacity is actually the key one, and it starts from automating your security, your compliance, your governance in SBD, like security by design. And that actually comes from, with the different phases, like SBD is actually approaches with the different designs. Like first one is actually understanding the requirements, understanding, how your policy should outline based on your business or based on your areas of work which you are doing. The phase two actually works in the build of secure environment and how your secure environment fits actually with the requirement and implementation. Then the third one actually is also the uses of templates. Templates is actually you design, that what are the services you are doing, where your systems are, where your data are, who will be testing, how you have done UATs, which systems you have, what are the backups, what is the real-time, systems are working, BCPs and all that. And then again, 4.1 is actually to perform the validations of activities, especially in terms of monitoring activities, in terms of dashboard reporting, in terms of analytics, because it's not like you have done and you have deployed and you have thrown it, in the market. No, you have to do the design, and again, the monitoring actually also the key one. Coming back again to your questions, actually it's depends on which type of cloud computing model you are using and which is in question. Assume like if you are doing software as a solution, then the burden actually of the security goes to the cloud providers. In part of this, actually the degree of abstractions, the SaaS module is, as you know, that is based on the high level of integrity functionality, and again the minimum customer controls or extensibility. Then again, if you are doing the infrastructure as a services, then again, it's also more of a cloud vendor provider or a physical, that how the virtual looks like, which most of the institution definitely they don't prefer, especially the financial institution. And again, if it is, the PaaS, actually the privacy again and the provider also, then again it manages to manage your entire infrastructure, including your middlewares, including your middleware components such as databases, real-time services, backups, BCP areas, and again the third-party service providers also. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Now we're coming towards the close of this discussion. So I want to ask all of you, each one of you, that for all the participants, for the benefit of all the participants, if you could give us your top 3 tips for securing your assets in the cloud. And if you think that new technologies like AI, ML have any role to play, because Faheem spoke about automating your security features as well. So let me start with you first, Steve. The 3 tips you would like to leave all participants on how you can secure your digital assets, what dynamic cloud security is all about.
Okay, thank you very much. So I would like to say that prior to onboarding your vendor, it's good to ascertain the security maturity level of that company. I think I would like also to touch on the previous question that you asked, whose responsibility is security between the vendor and the company? I think it's a shared responsibility, because at the point of onboarding, you, the company, you are interested in knowing the security maturity level of the cloud provider, right? And then there is an agreement document that has to be signed by both parties, which will spell out the RSI chart for security management. So there are responsibilities for the vendor, there are responsibilities for the client at the same time. So that establishing the security capability of the cloud provider is very critical. And I would also like to touch base on the first point that I raised on adaptive cloud management. That is also key. It's good that you manage your security architecture for network, database, and application in one location. And then thirdly, you need to manage scales. You know, I have said it before that you don't make assumptions that because you are competent with AWS, then that's applicable to Google Cloud and so on. So scale is very key for optimum security and optimum performance of your cloud solution. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for those tips, Steve. Oriyomi, let me ask you, towards the end, we've discussed a lot about this. What are your top 3 tips for those who are listening in on how to secure your assets in the cloud, the dynamic cloud security aspect that everybody must consider, and whether you plays an important role in automation of security as well?
Okay, so let me answer the first tips. I'll give you the tips first before I give my opinion on the automation. So the first thing I would say is balance protection with ease of access. You know, a lot of people will tell you you're going to cloud because they want to be able to access it anywhere. So you need to look for a way to draw a balance. A lot of times you need to tilt towards more into security. So I would say maybe like a 55% to 45. People would look at the opportunity to try and get access from anywhere by any means. But you need to look for a better way to, you know, to draw the balance. The next I would say is maintain control with effective traffic management. You need to maintain how your traffic moves. You need to maintain and ensure that it is only going out or coming in via those means. And that will lead me to my third one, which is to generate insights, which is via monitoring and analytics. So you need to monitor effectively so that you could, from a view, you could have conclusive information from what you're looking at. Because a lot of times people underestimate the effect of monitoring. When you manage stuff properly and you know what is passing through where and how, and then when you're monitoring, you understand from a get-go when you see something abnormal. Sometimes abnormality may be force major, or maybe may also be false positive. But still, when you do those 3, I believe you would gain a lot of grounds. And then to answer on AI, I believe with the way technology is going, if you don't automate, if you don't do a little bit of machine learning, one of the major cliches I always say is you automate or you die. Because the truth is you cannot continue increasing your workforce. You cannot continue increasing, so because the business is growing, doesn't mean the security team too has to grow like exponentially or, double up. That automatically means that your responsibility will increase and it will not go with the team's growth, which means if you have 10 headcounts as at this year, because the company opens 2 other major branches outside Africa, doesn't mean that you would have an extra headcount. So that means you need to look for a way to leverage on AI and machine learning so that you could automate regular operational tasks, and then you could have peace of mind while you monitor and then do your effective planning in terms of testing and the likes. Thank you. I think you're mute.
Yeah. Thank you, Oriyomi. Stanley, what would you like to say as a parting shot? Three best tips you would like to give all the participants on securing assets in the cloud? Stanley, we can't hear you. Are you speaking? Okay, I think we'll get back to Stanley on this question. Faheem, what would you say are your top three tips for all participants on how to secure cloud assets?
Thank you. I would just say that already so many much has already been said, so I will not repeat. I would just say, just do the future proof. Take a comprehensive understanding that you are now, in your company's digital assets, cloud security, and ensure that everything is in full picture of your business's finance, and again the values of your business. As a leader, you need to make sure that the digital assets are covered in any agreements, in the partnership agreements, succession planning, backups, BCPs, and all that. But having said that, do not fear because the security will be always remain. But the company need to grow. The tech is actually the new, new goal, new area of acceleration in all the areas. Digital transformation is the one which is people are going. So don't fear. Just maintain all the control parts, and definitely you can grow well within these all manageable controls. Thank you.
Right, Derrick. As a startup, what are your tips to all participants? How do startups balance their growth, their costs, and the security of their cloud assets?
Yes, thank you. So for me, I think it's very important for startups to look at ways they can conduct frequent audits because then this can help them identify different areas of vulnerabilities and interesting, cost-effective ways to be able to manage them. Secondly, it's very important to keep up with tabs on regulation, especially, for example, in Nairobi. Keep tabs on what is happening in the health space, finance, and lending. And see what are the interesting developments that can affect your data or cloud security strategy. It's also very important to train your teams on the different aspects of security and threats. Because sometimes, as CTOs, we think we want to have an overview of what is happening in an organization. And anytime there's a phishing email, there's a notification that we send to our teams, but it's important for them to know and act autonomously every time they are a target for threats. On ML and AI, it's very important because then again, we're already operating in an environment of constrained resources. And for the future, scaling of different frameworks, then of course you want that process to be as automated as possible, of course, to make it easy, seamless, and cost effective. Thank you.
All right, a big thank you to all of you for joining us. Derrick, Oriyomi, Faheem, Steve, thank you all for joining us. I think Stanley's dropped off, but thank you all for joining us and sharing with us your views on dynamic cloud security. Pleasure having you with us, and thank you all for sharing your wisdom with everyone. I'm sure a lot of tips that all participants have got from you. Thank you.